Hey everyone, welcome to Sports Unlimited. I'm Morgan Atz at Owings Mills with the Ravens for training camp arrival day. That is when we spend our time in the parking lot when players arrive to the team's facility the morning before camp practice number 1. Most of the guys have been here, from rookies last week to quarterbacks and injured players. But this is the mandatory report date where all players have to be here before camp gets underway tomorrow. We got our eyes on a few injured players who will not be ready for tomorrow's start of training camp, and wide receiver Rashad Bateman and outside linebacker Tyus Bowser. Bateman's still not 100% from last season's surgically repaired foot, and Bowser has a non-football knee injury. This roster has high expectations for individual performers like young edge rushers Odafe Away and David Ajabo, contract year players and inside linebacker Patrick Queen, who's in good hands playing alongside All-Pro Roquan Smith, and offensive lineman Ben Cleveland and Daniel Falalele in the mix for open competition at left guard. But there's no greater expectation than the one this team has for itself in 2023.
I think we've gotten close, and that's part of it. I think that's got to be something that drives you, drives each and every one of us that's been here and played here during those years, is just letting those guys know that we do have unfinished business and it's time to roll.
Ravens inside linebacker Roquan Smith, when asked about the high expectations of this team and the roster that they have, he said, quote, "It's easy to be paper champs," meaning the team has to prove itself, and that starts tomorrow with training camp. First practice is at 2:30 in the afternoon. Reporting in Owings Mills, I'm Morgan Atzett for Sports Unlimited.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 6 o'clock, jury deliberations will enter a third day in the trial of a 16-year-old Squeegee kid accused of killing a driver. The event's in court today. And this story is all new at 6 o'clock, why Harvard is now under investigation over its practice of legacy admissions.
Well, the Fox 45 Weather Authority team continues to track a weather maker that can produce severe storms tonight. We have your hour-by-hour forecast. Jury deliberations will enter a third day in the case of a Squeegee teen charged with shooting and killing a Baltimore driver. Fox 45 News is on verdict watch.
Brooklyn Day was the highlight of the year. One big old fun-filled day.
And as the investigation into the Brooklyn Day mass shooting continues, Fox 45 News speaking with a longtime resident about how the community has changed over the years.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
Well, Fox 45 News continues to be under weather alert tonight. You're looking at live pictures from Baltimore to Ocean City to Towson. Storms are moving through the region. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Mary Bubala. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers here with a weather outlook for tonight. Jonathan, you just got an update moments ago?
Yeah, a little silver lining. At least Baltimore City points north have been dropped from the severe thunderstorm watch. You see that pinkish area kind of getting cut off. So I guess some of the energy has generally been kind of sapped out of the atmosphere, at least north. Now south, still the Eastern Shore as well as Anne Arundel County, you are still under a severe thunderstorm watch that lasts until 8 p.m. There's still some cells out there, and I wouldn't be surprised even here in Baltimore. Some of the computer models are saying do get scraped with some stronger cells. Still, the flooding is a potential till 8 p.m. We do have a flood watch in effect up and down the 95 corridor. Still the potential of large hail and damaging wind gusts through about 8 p.m., especially Baltimore City south and especially south of the city. And everybody up and down the 95 corridor still could see potentially some flooding. Let's take a look at the latest computer model. Again, up and down the 95 corridor through 6:45 and maybe even 8:30. This is why we've shaved down that watch. Looks like we just get scraped by some of this before it moves south and east. And tomorrow is a much hotter day. And we could even be threatening 100 in our forecast. I'll let you know when. That's coming up in my exclusive 10-day in a few minutes.
Jonathan, thank you. You can use the free Fox 45 weather app to access the latest information when severe weather hits right on your cell phone. Just search for WBFF in your app store.
This is natural in a case of this complexity.
Like the general public, we're left to wait.
Well, jury deliberations will enter a third day in the case of a 16-year-old Squeegee kid charged with shooting and killing a Baltimore driver. Well, the jury is struggling to come up with a verdict at this time. Before wrapping up for the day, the jury this afternoon asked the judge about the definition of a mistrial. The judge told them it's too soon to quit. The jury is sifting through a week of arguments to determine if the teen is guilty of first-degree murder and weapons charges. Well, the state argues it was premeditated and that Tavon Scott walked across Conway Street, got a mask and a gun, then shot 48-year-old Timothy Reynolds. The teen's attorneys argue that he was not the shooter and the shooting itself was in self-defense.
You got 12 strangers that are in this room, and you don't know really what was important to them, what wasn't important to them, how they perceived the evidence.
Will the state retry this case?
That's really a question for the state. What I can tell you is that the family is going to fight as long and as hard as it takes to make sure that justice is delivered here.
Fox 45 asked the office of the city state's attorney if they plan on retrying the case if it ends in a mistrial. They said no comment. Mary?
Well, Kai, arguments of self-defense and duty to retreat have been big aspects of this trial. Alexa Ashwell has a deeper dive into the laws here in Maryland.
Self-defense laws differ by state. Here in Maryland, there is no stand your ground law, rather a duty to retreat under certain circumstances. Self-defense laws justify a person's use of lethal force in order to prevent imminent death or serious bodily harm. Maryland is one of nearly a dozen states in the U.S. that imposes a duty to retreat. Law expert Kirk Nachman explains.
Before you can exercise a fatal level of self-defense, you have to at least have an attempt or be able to attempt to retreat from the situation.
Nachman says the duty to retreat applies when someone is in public, including when in your car, and differs based on the facts of the situation.
If someone has a firearm and they can reach out and hit you at a greater distance, you obviously would have less of a duty to retreat or turn your back on the person with a firearm to run away, for example. If someone has a bat or a knife and you're already 10 feet away from them and they can't reach out and touch you in that moment, but you still are defending yourself and you're in reasonable fear of imminent bodily harm, you would have at least a duty to attempt to retreat.
That example closely mirroring one of the key questions a jury was posed with in deciding the teen squeegee worker's fate in the Timothy Reynolds murder trial. But what about when not in public, rather inside your home or business? Nachman says Maryland has a castle doctrine.
In other words, your home is your castle. You don't have any duty to retreat in your castle. The assumption is that, you're defending your home from an intruder and the aggressor is coming into your home or business.
My heart is
eating just thinking of it.
That scenario happening to this local store owner. Earlier this year, the woman shot an armed robber who investigators say entered her shop and held her at gunpoint.
He came after me, and we got into a scuffle.
Nachman says knowing the law and your rights is crucial.
So Maryland, of course, less conservative than some other states that do have the stand your ground law, including Florida and Texas. In Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, for our full coverage on the Squeegee trial and the latest developments from the courthouse, head to our website, foxbaltimore.com. And here's a look at today's top trending stories. Number one, Mayor Brendan Scott set to nominate a new fire chief tomorrow. That position has been open since former Chief Niles Ford resigned back in December after a report detailing the failures that led up to the deaths of 3 firefighters at a vacant home fire in January of 2022. It's not clear who the mayor will tap for the role. The announcement is expected at 10 in the morning. Number two, we have new details about a deadly crash in Baltimore County. Police say on July 3rd, 75-year-old Bernard Emanuel was crossing the intersection at Dogwood and Rolling Road in Woodlawn when he was hit twice, first by an Acura, then by a second unknown vehicle. Emanuel was taken to the hospital where he died 3 days ago. The driver of the Acura stayed at the scene. The driver of the other car did not.
Ours didn't go at night. 5 o'clock and they was out of there. They didn't have to go home, but they had to get out of there.
Rosalie Pack helped organize Brooklyn Day for years while living in the Brooklyn homes. Now she is opening her photo album to show us what the event used to be more than 3 weeks after the mass shooting. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has a story you're seeing first on Fox.
These photo albums are full of memories.
Those were the good old days. Stuff like that didn't happen in Brooklyn.
Rosalie Pack called Brooklyn Homes her home for 44 years, and she was in charge of almost every party.
We used to serve Thanksgiving dinner. We would have Halloween parties. We had, of course, the Brooklyn Day.
Smiling faces, families, a parade.
Brooklyn Day was the highlight of the year.
She says when she was in charge, she worked with the other people in Brooklyn Homes, as well as the Housing Authority of Baltimore City, to block off streets and organize the massive event.
Like I said, it's just one big old fun-filled day. 5 o'clock and they was out of there. They didn't have to go home, but they had to get out of there.
Packing up by 5, very different than the recent years of Brooklyn Day, partying stretching well into the night. One newspaper clipping, a little faded by time, shows former Mayor Kurt Schmoke at Brooklyn Day. The date, July 13th, 1988. 35 years later, to the date.
Good evening and welcome to the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee meeting.
City Council demanding to know how 30 people could have been shot, 2 young people killed in Baltimore's largest mass shooting.
Too many unanswered questions. Who did it?
Pack eventually moved out of Brooklyn Homes in 2015. She says she had some issues with management and a desire for a home with a balcony, but also drug activity and crime creeping into the housing development over the years.
Drugs had been going on for probably a year before I knew anything about it.
Fox 45 News uncovering the man who rented a U-Haul at this year's Brooklyn Day and rented the supplies for the party, the same person facing multiple charges accused of dealing drugs in Brooklyn Homes this year. Pack says the organization of the party now is part of the problem.
My biggest question is why would they take it upon themselves to do it on, instead of having it at the community center? It's a lot of responsibility. And having it in the community center, you got the manager, you got the service coordinator, you got housing authority, because some of them always came. Having it off-site, I just don't see as a good idea.
Sources tell Fox 45 News investigators found bullet casings on scene from as many as 16 guns. More than 3 weeks later, Baltimore police have not arrested anyone for actually pulling the triggers. Even though it's been a decade since Pack lived in Brooklyn, what happened there hits home for her.
Just so sad.
And she says she's hopeful someone who was there to celebrate the community speaks up about what they saw during an event with such history.
It's going to hit home. Something's going to hit them personally. And then they're going to sing like a songbird. That's what I'm hoping.
The Housing Authority of Baltimore City says the tenant council hasn't been active for a few years. That's the organization that would have normally organized the Brooklyn Day block party. Now HAB says they have a few people who say they're ready to participate. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And here's the latest in the Brooklyn Day shooting investigation. The City Council will hold a second hearing on September 13th. They will question public safety agencies. Right now, police are looking into the possibility of 10 or more shooters. So far, only one arrest has been made. A 17-year-old is facing weapons charges and most recently 2 riot charges. We'll trust Fox 45 News to follow this investigation closely. We have the latest on air and online at foxbaltimore.com. Harvard is now under investigation over its practice of legacy admissions. We have the new details.
Consumer confidence hits a 2-year high and U.S. supply chains dodge a bullet. I'm Atrell Nashar with how these developments could help stave off a recession.
Let's take a look right now at the Fox 45 Fox Box. Bronny James, son of NBA star LeBron James, is in stable condition after suffering cardiac arrest. Apparently happened during a basketball practice yesterday in Southern California. The motorcade carrying Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was involved in a crash along a Tennessee highway today. Now, one of his staffers did suffer a minor injury. It comes as we learned DeSantis has let go of a third of his presidential campaign staff. Harvard is under investigation over legacy admissions. That probe by the Department of Education is a result of claims that such practices illegally discriminate against minority applicants in favor of less or equally qualified wealthy students. In a blow to the Biden administration, a federal judge is blocking a key asylum rule for migrants at the southern border. That rule, in part, allows border officials to deny asylum to migrants who show up without first applying online. Mary?
Guy, thank you. Well, UPS workers will not go on strike after the company reached a tentative agreement with labor union leaders that includes higher pay and safer working conditions. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar joins us live from Capitol Hill with more on this tonight. Atra.
Hey, good evening, Mary. This deal is coming in the nick of time because the current contract expires early next week. So it's not only a boost for workers, but it's also sparing the economy a double whammy as the Federal Reserve considers raising interest rates yet again. The U.S. economy dodging disaster Tuesday when UPS and the Teamsters Union, representing more than 340,000 of its workers, reached a deal that will keep trucks on the road and cargo planes in the air. A strike would have upended supply chains, threatening to undo progress that's been made on inflation and consumer confidence. The latter just reached a 2-year high, according to new data from the Conference Board.
I think consumers are definitely happier, not only now, but they're also thinking about the future.
The group's chief economist, Dana Peterson, says a lot of that has to do with the labor market.
Most people are working. People have experienced some kind of increase in their wages. Some people have quit and found better jobs. And certainly we've seen people being supported by leftover excess savings.
What's a boost for workers is acting as a headwind for the Federal Reserve. Tight labor market conditions helping to keep inflation high. On Tuesday, members kicked off their 2-day meeting that's expected to result in another quarter-point interest rate hike, which could mean the highest federal funds rate since 2001. What's more difficult to predict is whether Fed economists will update their predictions about there being the potential for a mild recession beginning later this year. But it's the National Bureau of Economic Research that's tasked with officially declaring a recession. And its chair, John Lipsky, says he's confident inflation will continue to moderate.
There are good reasons to think that this economy could avoid a recession, but there are also good reasons to think that growth is going to be slow.
That slowed growth, that slowed demand is really an intentional effect of the Federal Reserve's interest rate increases. And according to a Wallet Hub analysis, to put this into terms that make it more relatable, if the Federal Reserve increases rates by a quarter point, which we'll learn around this time tomorrow if they do, that'll result in an extra $1.7 billion being paid by credit card holders over the next 12 months. Mary, back to you.
That is a lot of money. All right, national correspondent Atra El-Nashar, thank you from D.C. tonight.
Thanks.
We continue on the tail end of a weather alert as severe thunderstorm watches do get shaved southbound still in Anne Arundel County and southern half of the area, really. Lower Eastern Shore, you are under a severe thunderstorm watch that continues until 8 p.m. Doesn't mean that there still won't be some showers and maybe a rumble. You see some here up towards Cecil County and the headwaters of the Chesapeake Bay. And then there's more rain that's south of Annapolis. The big storms kind of put a cap on things earlier south and east of Baltimore City that now are moving toward Pocomoke City and also on the lower Eastern Shore and the lower Delmarva toward Ocean City currently. There's more that's out to the west. So this is why I'm saying we're not totally done yet, I don't believe. And we still do have a flood watch that's in effect up and down the 95 corridor. Had some estimated amounts of anywhere between 5 to 7 inches of rainfall out of storms earlier south and east of Dundalk on the radar. Still some of those severe threats in that watch area. The potential of some gusty, damaging winds, maybe some large hail, and maybe even again some quick flash flooding. 87 right now, calm winds. It is pea soup on the Mile 1000 cam with it still feeling like 90 with moderate to high humidity. Warmth and humidity builds, have a few disturbances around. That's what's building in some of those storms once again into early this evening. Then big heat and humidity beyond that. So let's track things out on the future scan. Again, we're not totally done just yet. A lot of this consolidating just south of Baltimore. I think this is why the National Weather Service has kind of cut down on that severe thunderstorm watch. But some of that could traipse very close to downtown, and especially southern reaches of Baltimore. So keep that in mind. Still some heavy rainers and some gusty winds through about 8 to 9:30. After that, it all passes south and east and eventually away, and then the hotter air really builds in big time for tomorrow and beyond. 67 becoming mostly clear. Some patchy fog late night tonight after the evening storms, and 91 tomorrow. Mostly sunny skies. There is a code orange air quality alert in effect from Baltimore City points north and east on the 95 corridor. So those folks that have pre-existing respiratory issues are going to have to spend some extra time inside tomorrow, and it gets hotter from here. I'm going to let you know how hot in the exclusive 10-day forecast coming up in a couple of minutes.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Storms rolled over parts of Washington, D.C. Tuesday afternoon, producing a rare funnel cloud. Hillary Howard captured these images in its short existence before it disappeared. There is no evidence it touched down. This beautiful, complete circular rainbow was visible on a flight heading to Seattle, and a breathtaking sunset painted the sky near Reno, Nevada.
Listen to Off the Radar. New episodes every Tuesday. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Sweating over utility bills as the heat wave expands, the challenges families nationwide are facing to keep cool.
Well, take a look at this. This is the scene out of Virginia this morning following a pipeline explosion. This is in the Shenandoah County area, an hour from Fairfax County. The pipeline belongs to TC Energy. The pipeline has been shut down right now. No injuries reported, but an incredible explosion there. It looks like along a highway.